Did you hear that?
I'm scared.
It'll be alright.
I don't know what I saw in the woods behind our cabin, but I don't think it was a bear. Something big moved across the creek bed and stopped behind a dry patch of alder. I caught it out of the corner of my eye. It was barely enough movement to make me look. At first, I figured it was a black bear, maybe pushing through early for food. But it didn't move like one, and it was on two legs. I was maybe 20 yards out, walking one of our old trails behind the cabin. We've had that place for years. Small hunting cabin on private timberland near Prospect, Oregon. Nothing fancy, simply a wood stove and a bunk. I come out a few times a year to scout and cut firewood. I know that area like the back of my hand. That trail runs along a shallow, dry creek with heavy tree cover on the far side. I've seen all kinds of game out there. Deer, elk, bear, even the occasional cougar. But this wasn't any of those. Whatever it was, it stood still just inside the brush, mostly in shadow, covered in dark brown or black hair that looked kind of stringy. It was big, shoulders wider than a man's, and tall enough I could see part of the head over the brush line. I couldn't see its face. It wasn't looking right at me, but it knew I was there. I don't know how. I just had that feeling like when another hunter spots you in the tree line. It didn't make a sound. No grunt, no footsteps, no crashing around. It simply stood there. I watched it for maybe 5 seconds before it turned and walked uphill, deeper into the trees. There was still no noise, and that's what stuck with me, honestly. A man or bear that size should have made some racket even in the duff, but it moved through like it had done it 1,000 times before. I stayed put for a minute, then eased back to the cabin. I didn't feel scared, not exactly, just unsure. I stayed up there a little longer than usual. Figured I'd try for some early season deer hunting and keep an eye out. The next few days nothing happened, but a few small things didn't sit right. I found some tracks in the mud along the creek. They were big, wider than any deer or elk, but not quite the usual bear prints. The shape was weird, like it had a big toe separated from the rest, and the stride was long, almost human-like. I followed them for a bit, but lost the trail where the ground got rocky. Later I noticed broken branches about 6 or 7 feet off the ground. They were snapped clean through, too high for deer or elk to have hit them, and the pattern didn't look like a bear pushing through either. There was no bark stripped off or claw marks, just branches broken like something leaned or bumped against them. One morning I caught a foul smell around the cabin, not like a skunk or dead animal. It was musky, wet, and sour. It lingered for a while, then faded with the wind. I figured it was something natural, but it was unusual enough I made a note of it. About a week after the first sighting, I was out again near dusk, running another line on the far side of the creek. The woods had cooled off and the shadows were longer. That's when I saw it again. This time it was closer, maybe 15 yards away, and partially lit by the fading sun. I caught the outline clear. Tall, broad, hair hanging off its arms, shoulders hunched just a bit. It was crouched down, kind of like it was watching the creek. But when I stepped forward and looked up, I got a quick glimpse of its face. Dark eyes, wide nose, and a mouth that was shut tight. It didn't move or make a sound, just stared. Not hostile, not curious, but steady, like it was thinking something over. After a few seconds, it stood up and slipped back into the thicker trees. Again, no crashing, no rustling, just a shadow swallowed by the underbrush. I left that night and didn't go back for a couple of months. When I came back, the tracks were gone, and I didn't notice any new broken branches. The woods felt like they had settled down again. I still don't know what I saw, and I'm not the kind to make up stories. I've tracked animals for decades, and this was something different. I don't think it was a bear or a man. Whatever it was real enough to leave marks, smells, and memories I haven't forgotten. That's all I've got. That was the end of our first story. Let me know in the comments what you thought about it. Also, take this time to hit the like and subscribe button. And don't forget the bell notification. I'd love to read your scary stories and possibly have them on this channel. The links to send them to are on the screen. Now I won't interrupt again, and here are the rest of the stories. I spotted it again just past the ravine, tall, hunched, keeping to the edge of the trees like it didn't want to be seen. I didn't stop walking, didn't break stride. I'd already circled back once, thinking maybe I was imagining the pacing, but every time I changed direction it adjusted, kept just far enough to stay in cover, but not far enough to be gone. This was my third week posted up here, filling in while the usual backcountry ranger took time off. North of Split Rock, about 10 miles off the shore trail. Thick timber, sharp drops, no cell service. You get used to the isolation. I like it, usually. But that stretch of forest didn't feel right. I'd had the sensation for days. It started with the little things. A half-eaten snowshoe hare left in the middle of my trail. Clean bite, no tracks. Twice I found prints that almost looked like wolf, but the shape was off. Too long in the heel, spread wrong, and whatever made them walked in a straight line, not the zigzag you'd expect from a canine. I've tracked wolves, bears, even a cougar once. This wasn't any of those. And then there was the sound, or the lack of it. One afternoon I was cutting through a dense patch of cedar when I realized I could hear my coat shifting more than the woods around me. That's not normal. It wasn't quiet exactly. More like everything was cushioned. You know, the way sound feels when you're inside a car with the windows rolled up. Even my boots seemed to land softer than they should have. It gave me that weird inner ear pressure, like flying without popping. I stopped and just stood there for a moment and listened. A light breeze should have brought rustling in the canopy, maybe a squirrel scolding or a jay overhead. Instead, it felt like I was listening through glass. I turned in a slow circle, hand resting on the strap of my pack. I didn't draw my sidearm, but rested my hand on it, out of habit. I've had run-ins with angry moose and black bears, but this didn't feel like that. This time I felt watched. The first time I saw it, it was dusk. I'd been out marking a damaged trail sign about a half-mile from base camp. Snow had come in light that morning, so there was fresh powder on the branches and not much noise underfoot. Coming back, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, up the slope near the tree line. Thought it was a deer at first, but the shape was wrong. It was tall and upright. One long step, then another. No bounding or jerky movement like a bear rearing. It stayed even and controlled. I slowed down but didn't stop. My instinct was to keep moving and act like I hadn't noticed. Whatever it wasn't charging. It was shadowing my movement. That's when I realized it had been pacing me for at least a quarter mile. I started to feel like I was being hunted. The next few days I stayed close to camp and radioed in more than usual. I didn't mention anything odd. I've seen good rangers passed over for sounding off about things they couldn't prove. It wasn't worth it. But I kept spotting signs, deep scratches on a tree trunk at shoulder height, but nothing fresh. I tried brushing snow over the odd prints, but something about them stuck in my head. The stride was too long. It didn't trot, it walked, one foot in front of the other, just like a man. A week after that first sighting, I was up by an old firebreak trail checking for downed limbs. It was late afternoon with the sun just tipping toward the lake. I paused to take a drink, and that's when I saw it again. Farther this time, maybe 60 yards out. It stood near the edge of a birch stand, one arm braced low against the tree like it was leaning. I didn't see eyes, not clearly, but it was facing me. Head low, shoulders too high, legs like a dog's, but the torso moved like a person's. No heavy breathing, no sound at all. It watched me. I watched it. Then it turned, walked back into the woods. Again, it didn't have any panic and no crashing. It was just gone. I hiked back a little faster than usual that night, and I kept my sidearm holstered but unlatched. Slept with the lantern on. I never saw it again after that second time. But I've worked that park system for almost 15 years and I've never felt anything like that. I wasn't scared, more like cautious in a way I couldn't shake off. The way you feel walking past a house with a big dog on the other side of a thin fence. You're not in danger, not yet, but you don't test the line. I signed off that season, did my reports like normal, and didn't say a word to anyone. Still haven't. But I can tell you this, there's something in those woods that walks too smooth to be a bear, and leaves tracks too long to be a wolf. I don't care what name people give it. I know it's real. I woke up to that sound, high-pitched crying, sharp and clear, right outside my bedroom window. It didn't sound like a real baby though, more like someone trying to imitate one but just missing the mark. I pulled back the curtain, heart pounding, but all I saw was the yard, dark as a coal mine, and the bare branches of the mesquite tree swaying in the wind. Then the crying stopped. No footsteps, no rustling. And that's when I knew something was out there. Something that wasn't human. I'd only been back at the ranch a couple weeks after spending a few years in the city. I thought I'd enjoy the quiet, get away from all the noise and crowds. The first week was too quiet, almost unsettling. You could hear yourself breathing at night, and the wind through the trees sounded like a far-off whisper. Then the crying started. It came every single night, right around midnight, like clockwork. Sometimes it sounded like a baby, other times more like an old woman whispering, maybe even cursing. I'm not one to get spooked easily, but that sound, it felt like it was crawling under my skin. Something was wrong with it. I asked around at the feed store, thinking maybe some kid was messing with me, or maybe there was a hurt animal out there somewhere. The old man behind the counter looked at me serious-like and said, "Son, that ain't no prank. That's La Lechuza." I laughed it off at first. I'd heard the stories growing up, but I never took them serious. But that old man didn't laugh back. Said she was a witch turned into a big owl, and she didn't like folks who talked too much or crossed her. The crying didn't stop after that. If anything, some nights it felt closer, like it was right outside the porch, just watching. One night, I swear I saw something huge slip through the trees at the edge of the yard. Big wings, I think, and a face, old and wrinkled, peering out from the feathers. I blinked and it was gone. After that, I kept salt on the windowsills just like the old stories say to do. I closed the window tight and said a few prayers before bed. The crying didn't go away, but it got quieter, less urgent, like it was thinking or waiting. I don't plan on leaving. This is my home now, but I keep my doors locked and my eyes open. La Lechuza might be out there, watching. Maybe she's just passing through. Maybe she's waiting. Either way, I'm not letting her inside. I work as a game warden in the Ardennes, one of Belgium's densest forests. Most days are quiet, just routine patrols, checking traps, keeping an eye on the deer herds. Nothing ever really surprising. But late last autumn, something happened that stuck with me. It was just before dusk, the sky a slate gray fading into night. I was walking a narrow trail near La Roche in Ardennes. The forest around me thick with tall pines and old oaks. The air had that crisp, damp chill you get when the sun dips below the horizon, but the cold hasn't fully set in. The usual sound of the forest were fading. The birds had quieted down, and even the wind seemed to have calmed. Just the crunch of my boots on the leaf-strewn path. Then I caught a noise, a low guttural growl mixed with a hiss. It wasn't loud, but it had a weight to it that made me freeze. I glanced up just in time to see a shadow slip between the trees. It was large and sleek, moving with a quiet power I'd never seen in any animal around here. It wasn't a wolf or a boar. The creature's eyes caught the last light, yellow and sharp, almost glowing in the dim. It held my gaze for what felt like an eternity, intelligent and curious but unreadable. It didn't approach, didn't make a sound, just watched me. After a long moment, it turned and vanished into the underbrush like a ghost. I stood there for a while, heart steady but mind racing. I've heard stories before, rumors of a big cat living in these woods. Some say it's an exotic pet escaped years ago. Others think it's a wild feline nobody's ever caught on camera. In the days after, I found tracks along the trail, large paw prints unlike anything native to the Ardennes. They were too big for a lynx and didn't match a wolf or dog. Since then, I've kept a closer watch, but I haven't seen it again. I don't know exactly what I saw that evening, but whatever it was, it's real, and it's still out there. I was driving home late one night after visiting family out in the hills of Guerrero. The road I take winds through thick pine forest and narrow mountain passes, and there's barely any streetlights once you're past the last town. I've done the drive a dozen times, usually by myself, and I'm used to the quiet. That night, however, something felt different. About halfway through the drive, near a stretch where the trees press close to the edge of the road, I noticed something in the headlights. 2 red dots, glowing steadily on the side of the asphalt. At first, I thought it was the reflection from a deer's eyes or maybe a coyote, but those eyes didn't blink or move. I slowed down, squinting into the dark. Then I saw it, a large black dog, much bigger than any wild dog or stray I'd ever seen. Its fur was slick and shiny, almost wet-looking in the beams of my headlights. It stood there watching me. The air around it felt colder, like the temperature dropped just in that one spot. I kept my eyes on the road as I rolled down the window, half expecting it to bark or run off. It just stared, unblinking, those burning red eyes locked on mine. I was frozen for a moment, then hit the gas and sped past. When I looked in the rearview mirror, I swear it was still standing there, watching. The next few nights, I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. Sometimes when I was outside the house, I'd catch glimpses of something black, moving just beyond the edge of the yard. At night, I started hearing growls and low howls, different from the coyotes or foxes I'm used to. The sounds were deeper, slower, more deliberate. I started locking my doors earlier, double-checking windows, and kept a flashlight by my bed. A neighbor told me about the Black Cadejo, the dark spirit dog that follows travelers, especially those driving or walking alone at night. It's supposed to be a bad omen, sometimes leading people to trouble or worse. I didn't believe in that kind of thing before, but after seeing those eyes, hearing those growls, I'm not so sure anymore. I haven't seen those eyes again since that night on the road, but I keep hearing things in the dark, and sometimes I catch that cold spot, that heavy silence, like something standing just out of sight. I don't know what it wants. Maybe it's just watching. Maybe it's waiting. Either way, I don't drive that stretch of road late anymore. I've been fishing the same stretch of river in northern Washington for years. It's tucked away, quiet, wild, and not many people come through. That kind of place where the river's voice is the loudest thing you hear, and the trees seem to hold their breath. Last fall, I decided to camp out overnight along a bend where the river widens. I'd fished there plenty in the day, but never stayed the night. I set up my tent near the water, got a fire going, and settled in. The first few hours were normal. The fire crackled, insects buzzed nearby, and the usual chorus of frogs and owls filled the dark. I kept an ear out, but nothing felt out of place. Around midnight, I woke up to a different sound. Not the rustle of wind or the calls of animals, but something heavier. Thud, thud. It was footsteps. They weren't close, maybe 50 yards away, but they carried through the stillness, slow and steady. I stayed frozen, listening. The night seemed to hold tight around me. The firelight flickered, casting long shadows into the forest. The thudding kept going, unhurried. I grabbed my flashlight quietly and slipped out of the tent, trying not to make a sound. The beam cut through the dark, at first just empty trees and underbrush. Then, just across the riverbank, something shifted. A shape, large, bulky, moving with a slow, measured gait. Not running or panicked. The light caught it for a second. Thick dark hair, broader than any bear I've ever seen. The figure paused and turned its head toward me. Then came the eyes, deep, dark, almost human in their intelligence. It didn't growl or make a sound, just stood there, calm and still. I didn't move, didn't breathe too loud. After what felt like a long stare, it turned and disappeared into the shadows like a ghost. I stayed up the rest of the night, ears straining for anything else, but the woods went quiet again. Morning came slow. I found huge footprints near the riverbank, big enough to fit both my hands side by side, deep in the soft mud with a stride too wide for any humans. I don't know what I saw. Bigfoot? Something else? I don't chase legends, but that night changed something in me. Sometimes when the wind blows just right, I swear I hear those slow, heavy steps, echoing along the river. I'm not the jumpy type. I've lived alone in this house for going on 5 years now, about 20 minutes outside of Grand Rapids, Minnesota. Wooded property, no real neighbors to speak of, and that's exactly how I like it. I work second shift, so by the time I get home and settled, it's usually after midnight. I'll sit with a cold drink on the porch, listen to the crickets, let the night wind down. Last night started off no different. I got home just before 1, cracked a beer and stepped out onto the back porch. It was warm, humid, sky was clear enough to see the Milky Way, but the woods felt different. Just quiet in a way they shouldn't have been, like the air was hanging heavy, sound not quite carrying right. I chalked it up to the weather and sat for maybe 20 minutes before heading back inside. I didn't lock the back door. Don't usually bother unless it's the weekend crowd up here screwing around with fireworks. But just after 2 a.m., I was sitting in bed reading when I heard something on the gravel out back. Not a car, not footsteps exactly, but a dragging, shifting kind of crunch, like something big walking just on the edge of the yard. I turned off the lamp and moved to the window. Moonlight was bright enough to see the tree line. I didn't see anything at first, but then I caught it. Movement. Something passed between the edge of the barn and the woods. It wasn't in a hurry, but it wasn't casual either. Just this big, hunched silhouette cutting across my yard like it had business there. I waited, but nothing happened for about 10 minutes. Then I heard a soft thud on the side of the house, like someone leaning into the siding, maybe bracing a hand against it. I crept through the kitchen and turned out the porch light. There was nothing there, but I swear the screen door looked like it was hanging a little crooked. At this point, I locked everything, doors, windows, even the garage. I turned off all the lights and sat in the dark living room with my rifle across my lap. It wasn't panic. I've dealt with trespassers before. But this wasn't someone looking to steal gas or copper. This felt different, bigger, heavier. Around 3 a.m., I heard the door handle rattle like someone gently testing it. Then nothing. No footsteps, no retreating gravel. I waited there for a long time. Maybe half an hour passed before I saw it again. Out the front window this time. Just the top of its head passing under the porch light. Dark fur, tall enough to almost brush the overhang. It moved fast, but quiet, like it knew how to stay out of sight. That was the last time I saw it. I didn't sleep at all. Sun came up and everything looked normal. No prints, no damage, nothing stolen. But there were smudges on the glass of the back door. They were up high, too high for any person to have put them there unless they were standing on my porch railing. I've seen wolves, bears, even the occasional trespasser. This wasn't any of those, and I don't think it's the last time I'll see it either. I moved out to the edge of the res line in late September, just as the night started getting cold enough to bite. I'd inherited my uncle's trailer, an old single-wide with bad insulation but a solid propane heater, and I figured I'd stay out there a few months while I got back on my feet. It was quiet at first, peaceful even, just mesquite, dirt roads, and space, but about a week in, things started to feel off. The first time it happened, I thought it was a coyote. I heard it just after midnight. Long dragging sounds in the gravel out back, slow and heavy, like someone limping. I looked out the blinds and didn't see anything, but the next morning I found footprints. They had long toes, and one print dragged like it had a bum leg. It was maybe 30 degrees that night. Whoever or whatever was out there was barefoot. I tried not to dwell on it. I figured maybe someone was messing with me. But the next night, something started mimicking my voice. I was brushing my teeth in the small bathroom when I heard it, faint outside the window. "Hey," it called, "come here." It was my voice. Same inflection, same drawl. Just off like it had been run through a cheap speaker, or repeated back after being heard once. I didn't move an inch. The light was on, and I knew if I looked out the window, whatever was out there could see me too. I shut everything off and waited in the dark for about 30 minutes. Nothing came of it, but that night I started locking the bedroom door. A couple nights later, I heard my uncle's voice. He's been dead for a year now. "Come help me with this fence," he called from outside. That same quiet, flat tone. Not exactly emotionless, just wrong, like a bad impression. My uncle always used to say that thing people say when they're proud of you, even when it's for something small. "That's what I'm talking about, boy." And the thing outside repeated it once, in the middle of the night, just loud enough to hear. I didn't go out for days after that. I kept the curtains closed, only went to town during the day, and left the floodlight on out back even though it buzzed and flickered like crazy. The floodlight kept shorting out. It would last 20 minutes, then cut off. Every time it did, I felt like something was watching from the brush. Week 3, I started getting dead animals on the porch. First a crow, then a cat, then something that looked like a rabbit, but all stretched out and wrong, like it had too many joints. I took a shovel and buried each one as best I could in the cold ground, but the next morning, I'd find the hole dug back up, the carcass gone, and a new one on the steps. I tried calling a friend to stay the night, but everyone I talked to said the same thing. "You're past the line, man. Whatever's out there, that's yours now." I didn't sleep the last week. I started hearing breathing at night, not in the room, but outside the walls, heavy like something big was crouched beneath the windows. Sometimes it would walk around the trailer, slowly dragging its feet. Every few hours it would stop and make that low clicking sound, like a tongue hitting the roof of a dry mouth. Then came the last night. I'd made it a habit to sit on the floor of the living room, back to the wall, shotgun across my lap. The lights were off. I didn't bother anymore. I just waited. It was about 2:40 a.m. when I heard the front steps creak. They never creaked unless something heavy was on them. It waited, no knock, just the slow rattle of the door turning back and forth. It tried once, twice, then stopped. There was silence for a full minute. Then came the voice. Not my uncle's, not mine, but a new one. It was my mom. "Let me in," it said. "I brought your coat. You'll catch cold." She's been dead 10 years now. It sounded close, right against the door. Calm, rehearsed. I didn't answer, didn't move, just watched the handle. Then something slid under the door. It was a note. Written in chicken scratch and charcoal. It said, "I want to try your face next." I don't remember falling asleep, but I must have passed out. When I came to, it was morning. The door was still locked, but the note was gone. And the only thing outside was that rabbit again, folded up like paper, staring up at the sky. I packed that morning and left, and I haven't been back since. I don't know what it wanted. I just know it was learning. Every night it got better, closer, smarter. And I think if I had opened the door, it wouldn't have needed to mimic me anymore. I was staying in a tiny cabin outside of La Vida, Colorado, southern part of the state, near the Sangre de Cristos. It was supposed to be a writing retreat. No cell service, no neighbors for miles. Just me, the trees, and the mountains. I arrived in late October. Daylight faded fast and the wind cut cold through the pines. The cabin was rustic. No TV, no internet, and wood stove for heat. It was perfect, or at least I thought so. First night was quiet, but I heard coyotes off in the distance just before bed. Classic mountain ambience. Second night was different. Around 1 a.m. I woke up, no idea why, just shot awake, heart pounding. It was dead silent, too silent. No wind, no night sounds. Then I heard the crunch. Gravel out by the woodpile. I sat up and looked out the window. Nothing but pitch black. I told myself it was probably a deer. But the crunching came again, closer and slower. Definitely bipedal. It circled the cabin once, crunching footsteps in the gravel, then stopped right outside the door. I held my breath. The doorknob jiggled once. Then I heard a voice. It was my voice, from the other side of the door. "Hey, open up. You forgot to lock the truck." Every hair on my body stood up. The truck was locked. I had double-checked it. "Come on, just for a second," it said again, still using my voice, but off somehow. It was flat, too fast, like it was playing a recording. I didn't move. I sat there in the dark, clutching the fireplace poker, heart hammering. Then came the knock. 3 slow knocks. The kind that aren't impatient. The kind that know they can wait. I stayed frozen until dawn. No sleep, but there were no more sounds. Just that thick silence pressing in around the cabin. The next morning I found something carved into the door. It was a symbol, crude and jagged, like an upside-down deer hoof crossed with a serpent. I took a photo before sanding it off, but I could still feel it there afterward, like it left a burn in the wood. I called on a local man I had met in town, an older Navajo guy named Carl who ran the gas station. He listened quietly, then asked if I'd said anything back to the voice. "No," I said. "I didn't say a word." He nodded seriously. "Good. Don't ever answer it. You don't talk to skinwalkers." I'd heard the word before, thought it was just a legend. Carl looked me dead in the eyes. "You're on old ground out there. Used to be an Ute hunting path. We don't go near it after dark. If it knows you're alone, it'll try to get in." That night I locked everything. Curtains drawn, lights out. Just waited, poker in hand again. It didn't knock this time. It scraped. All along the siding, slow dragging claws, around the entire cabin, over and over. Then silence. Then a voice from behind the wall. inside the cabin. It said, "Let me wear your skin." That was it, just that one line. The next morning I saw prints, long barefoot tracks all the way around the cabin. Human-shaped but wrong, toes too long, heels dragged like something unused to walking on two legs. I threw my stuff in the truck and bolted for town. At the gas station, Carl looked at me and nodded. "You need ash and cedar. I'll get you some. Burn it tonight. Keep it going until dawn." I did exactly that, piled wood and sage in the cast iron stove, poured a circle of cedar ash around the door and waited. It came again just after midnight. It didn't bother knocking this time. Instead it screamed. Not human, not animal, but something in between. Like a cougar and a man being ripped apart at the same time. The walls shook. Then came a new voice. A woman's. One I hadn't heard in years. It was my sister. She had died when we were kids. "Please let me in. It's cold out here." I almost moved. Almost. But I didn't. It stayed outside until dawn, pacing, wailing, and scratching. When the sun came up, the scream stopped. The cedar ash was blown away in a perfect circle around the cabin, like the wind had tried to get in but couldn't. That was my last night in La Vida. I don't know what it was trying to do. Learn me, wear me, drag me into the woods. But I still dream about that voice in the dark. That slow scrape. That knock that waits. If you're out near the old places in southern Colorado, those untouched by trails, where the wind doesn't move and animals go silent, don't answer any voices calling your name. It's not someone you know, and it's not outside by accident.